Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Brokers Open podcast. I'm Dr. Ben Spears, the ambassador of Flow. I'm here with the big guy as usual. How's it going, Matt?
I'm doing fantastic. The ambassador of not sick anymore. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I know. I was like,
big guy.
you might be a little achy.
That's right. He's rubbing his back. Get your hand off me. Still a little gun shy.
Exactly. Well, Matt.
Yeah.
We have an amazing guest today.
Absolutely.
A great friend of both of ours.
Yep.
And I want to make sure that, we get him on here and get him talking just as fast as possible. So from Minneapolis, Minnesota, is that right?
That's right.
So make sure
We've got snow. We've got snow coming in on Friday.
Oh no.
I love that. I know you hate it. We talk about it, Omid, all the time, but I love it.
Yeah, so we have Omid Akale.
Yep. So Omid does a bunch of things, right? We know him a bunch of different ways. First of all, Omid, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Yeah. So he does a bunch of things, but we want to maximize, just like always, we want to maximize what happens with our audience, right?
Yep.
We want to get the most benefit from them. And so Omid does he's part of an acquisition team that helps people with properties that they want to move, right? And get them off of their hands. And he helps investors with what they do. And he's a very big resource in his market. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk a little bit about that. Before we dig into that, we got to hear a little bit about that background of Omid. Okay. So you were working on becoming a civil engineer, right? Is that
I was
before. So tell us a little bit about little Omid. Did little Omid always love real estate? Let's go back that far.
I actually knew absolutely nothing about real estate. I was kind of fascinated by bridges, and I grew up in different parts of the world, and I always thought it'd be cool to build some cool, worldly, global, insane bridges. And so I went to school for civil engineering. I got a job with the city of Minneapolis, was part of a light rail system. It was a newer project, so it was kind of cool. And then, a little bit into, after about a year of working with them, I realized a lot of people that I worked with were older and they kind of didn't like what they did. And so I didn't want to end up like that. At the time, I had a second job, valet parking, actually, at a restaurant. And one of the waitresses came in super happy one day, and she had just got her first check at her new job. And I'm like, oh, and she showed it to me and it was $2,000. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where do you work? And she was like, I'm a realtor. And I'm like, what's that? And then I dug around a little bit, found out about it, decided I wanted to get into real estate, or I wanted to buy some property. And I realized that I could make, a decent check if I was my own agent, because their commissions were pretty big. And so I got my license, and it's been real estate ever since.
I love it.
And at the time, I was about 19.
Yeah, so it's been 20 years. You've been in the biz a while, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. About 20 years.
And what's the market like in Minneapolis?
It's kind of similar to the rest of the country. It was moving really fast. Last month was kind of slow. But there's always a lot going on. I do a lot of work on the residential side and the investment side.
Yep.
Market's moving pretty fast, similar to the rest of the country, inflated prices, low inventory, that kind of thing. So it's moving pretty fast.
Nice.
Yeah. So
one thing I like about the investment side of the business is no matter where you are in the cycle, it's always a good market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point.
That's exactly right. So, so let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about that. We've already talked about any particulars that you need to keep proprietary to yourself. Totally understand that. But tell us a little bit just about the process of you wake up in the morning, you come into the office. What does your day-to-day look like?
Your email's on fire. There's
so
things going on.
I try to get a little bit of me time, get to the gym first thing when I wake up in the morning, because I know that by 9 or 10 it really gets wild. New deals, current deals, long lists of to-dos, So the average day I get into the office, get some paperwork done. Usually I go on a few appointments every day and look at leads so we have leads come in, and we have property or lead managers who kind of do a light assessment and see if it's worth doing a deeper dive. And then that comes across my desk, and I do a deeper dive based on a lot of previous market knowledge about the immediate markets in the Twin Cities. So a lot of that is based on experience, right? So I used to be a retail agent, just working with buyers and sellers the first part of the 2000s, and then the market crashed. And the way I was able to put food on the table is by doing BPOs, which seemed like grunt work at the time, because banks would repossess homes, and instead of doing an appraisal, they would want to do a BPO. So I linked with a company that did they did BPOs basically, because then it was unnecessary for them to pay for an appraisal, and they paid less for a BPO.
Right.
So there, at the time, there was a lot of new construction, on the third and fourth tiers ring suburbs. So I would do a ton of driving, and I would go look at all these houses and take photos and do what's similar to a CMA.
Right.
And just doing that on thousands and thousands of houses got me really familiar with the markets and the different areas and the trends and the value forecasts and that kind of thing. So I got really familiar with different areas, and that comes a lot into play when I'm assessing properties.
Yeah. I bet.
So that, and working with a lot of investors, knowing what each individual house, as you guys know, in real estate, every deal is different, every house is different, everything is a new problem to unravel, right? So I basically use my past expertise to figure out if it's a deal or not and where we need to come in at. Then I go on appointments, take a look at houses, manage everything. It's a little bit different for you guys in Florida, but we have 4 seasons. So we're looking at things like the roof, looking at if a property is vacant, we see if it's been winterized or not. Check the plumbing, because here pipes freeze and burst or expand and contract with the temperature drops.
Right.
So there are all these different things that we look at and analyze that with the current market. And so that's pretty much what my day is analyzing properties and making offers at where it makes sense. So
that's a great point. First of all, that's a lot to unwrap, but let me dig into one piece of this. Okay. So you're on a team, right? So you're not doing this by yourself. There's a lot of times that people are working on, purchasing distressed properties and stuff, and they're kind of going out and doing it themselves. Or once it gets under contract, they bring people in ad hoc, as they need them and everything. But you guys do a pretty decent volume of purchase and sales, correct? And
correct.
Do you mind talking about what that number is and how many you do a month, and then how many people are on your team, if you don't mind me asking?
So our team has less than 10 people. So far, I believe we're at about 7. And this includes funding person. We have a construction arm. We have someone who, she is sort of the admin or transaction coordinator. And basically she's amazing. She's the glue that holds our company together. Would be nothing without her.
Right.
So we have I love my team. I call us a SWAT team, basically, because we scale fast. We just hyper focus and get it done. And we have similar core values, right? So like the highest calling is basically helping and giving back. So we all have sort of core values that are aligned, and that comes into play. It makes us operate more seamlessly. Our volume, we're scaling pretty fast as we get more efficient with our systems. Numbers wise, I think we did under 80 homes last year, and this year we're probably over 200.
Wow.
I know in February we did 28 houses, which is a number I remember because it's like one house a day, because I think there were 28 days. Wow. So we work pretty hard, but I think the key to that is we love what we do, right? Like, I've never been able to say this before, even in real estate, but specifically now, there are days I wake up in the morning and I just can't wait to get to work. I'm super excited about it because it always makes me feel alive. It always keeps me on my toes. It's never the same. It's never boring or monotonous. And I have a personal definition of success, which is not letting any of my talents go to waste, or being able to use all my strengths or talents in one place. And these are work related and non-work related. For example, I come from a very diverse family, and I lived in different parts of the world. I went to 8 high schools for my 4 years of high school on 3 different continents. And so I never really made long-term friendships during my high school years, but I met a really wide variety of people. And so it helped me, and later on in life, be able to communicate with different kinds of people. And that comes into play big time in my job, because if I'm meeting with homeowners I meet with all kinds of homeowners, and I know how to speak their language. So not literally, but sometimes, but I can relate somehow. So there are all these different, things that come into play, and it makes me feel successful, which is why I love what I do. I can use pretty much all my talents in one place. So, and none of them feel wasted.
Yeah. And you said something. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. So yeah, with the team, we have a construction arm, which comes in really handy, because a lot of times I need a second opinion on what a rehab might cost, which determines what the numbers would be. And we just complement each other and help each other out tremendously. So
yeah. So you had mentioned something just a second ago that I think is super important for every agent, because obviously you've had 25 to 30, going on 30 years of history in the business. Sorry, I still got COVID brain. Omid, he's 20 years in, right? I made like 4.
In real estate.
Yeah, exactly. But he said, I wake up in the morning and I love doing, what I do. And so in real estate specifically, there are a lot of people who don't wake up feeling that exact same way.
Right.
And I think sometimes it's because they can get caught up in like, well, I go and I try and get single family home listings, and
they don't like that.
Or I try and get some web leads from Zillow or Realtor.com or something like that. Or I tried only commercial because I saw this one guy was like driving a Lambo and he did commercial, right? Something like that.
Right.
And then they chase it, and it's like, even if they go down that path and they have a little bit of success, still don't have that feeling of, I wake up every morning like loving, what it is that I do. So Owen, what I would ask you is, with 20 years in the industry, knowing that day one, you didn't go from where you were to where you are. What did that path look like, starting, getting your real estate license in hand that day, to getting to this point where it's like, whoa, like what I'm doing now with my real estate license is like, it's what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
Like what did that path look like?
So my first 2 properties were a duplex and a single residence that I got for myself. I failed drastically I succeeded on the purchase, but I failed at keeping them, right? And so I have this thing that I think people go to real estate school and they learn how to pass the test. They don't get taught anything about they're not taught how to sell homes or how to sell real estate. Just 1 second, please.
Or how to manage a transaction. That's a big thing. When we had Mitty on, that was a big thing that she talked about, is it's not just about getting people past the test. It's about them being able to manage the actual transaction, being able to meet the needs of the people that they're dealing with. Right. I mean, that's a big part of what they need to make sure that they can accomplish if they want to find that happiness. And Omid also said just a second ago, he said he wants to use everything that he's good at, right?
Yes.
Omid, I'm not trying to put any words in your mouth here, but
that's fine.
You said, I want to do the things that I like to do, and I'm trying to do those every day. That might be part of that. That might be part of that key, if I had to guess.
So basically, there were there were a few years where I didn't sell much, and I was kind of like most new agents trying to find my way. And then I had a couple of really good years, but then the market tanked. And when the market tanked, so I consider myself a very lucky person. Part of it, I believe, is my positive outlook, and I think it's important for agents to stay open-minded. For example, a lot of agents who are entrenched in the retail, helping buyers and sellers, have absolutely no idea how to do any investment real estate, right? Or they're so driven in that lane that they don't. A lot of people who are doing traditional real estate, is what it's called here, they don't know that there are all these different ways of participating in real estate transactions. So they might never know that it's beneficial, for example, to find an off-market property as an investor, right? They're used to looking for houses on what they can find on the MLS. So I think being open-minded is key, and I consider myself very lucky to have been open-minded about learning about different facets of real estate. You know, sometimes for trivial reasons like travel, I would take certification classes so that I get a designation, right? And instead of just getting online and getting GRI, for example, I would like go to Florida and take it at the Association of Realtors in Florida because I got a trip out of it and it was fun. Right. But I learned a lot by doing these different things. And the market collapsed. I did a lot of BPOs. And then as the economy began to reemerge, I started getting a lot of investor clients. And so I didn't know what to do or how to find good deals for them. And going down, I kind of went down this journey of trying to learn how to find good deals for investor clients. And that's how I learned more about investment real estate, and did a lot of networking. And luckily that's the path that I was led down.
Nice. So there's always stuff like that, right? So tell us some of the kind of stuff when you're dealing with that much volume. Tell us some of the things that sometimes happen, or things that you've come across that pop up in a transaction that might be unique to the situation that you're dealing with.
So when we're doing that much volume, we are acquiring homes from many different sources. We're typically by default buying homes as is, so we understand that, which opens the door to a lot of issues happening. A lot of times we go in, we put a purchase agreement as is, and we're closing in 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes we're closing in a week, sometimes we're closing in a month. But there are all kinds of things that could happen. We're getting a lot of properties from estates. So we've had a lot of deals that fall apart during probate, or, there are 5 siblings who are inheriting a property and it doesn't work out very well. An example of one is we were going to close, and then we realized that one of the siblings in a party of 3 siblings who had inherited a home had like an $80K tax lien. And so their portion wasn't enough to cover that. And so that deal fell apart. Right. But we've also had, especially last year during the pandemic, we had an eviction moratorium, so people couldn't get evicted. And a lot of the multifamily properties that we tried to acquire, we had to make a strong company policy to only buy vacant. And then a lot of landlords who wanted to sell their portfolios couldn't sell them to us because we needed them vacant. They couldn't get rid of or they couldn't evict any non-paying tenants. Right. So those are just a few of a myriad of reasons why deals have fallen apart. Hidden judgments, taxes, or back taxes, that kind of thing. So
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the thing that I'm most, because I'm selfish on these podcasts, I want to pick the things that are like in my brain, and I want to like take its brain. If I'm an agent and I'm listening, I know that a lot of agents, especially our listeners, are your typical like residential real estate agents.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got in the business, it was so like, if you could find an investor,
Yeah.
If you could find an investor, right? Like they could do this, you could do that.
Mhm.
And I just got to I got to thinking, and, of course, like there are signs on every corner if you want to like really just go find an investor.
Right.
Um, how was it, or what would you have as a recommendation for myself if I was just a residential real estate agent and I said yes, like I want to work with investors, I want to be able to do these types of things? What would be your advice to say I would probably start here, end here, or Ben, you're just too short, you're never going to make it, like whatever advice you have, I don't care, just share that with us, of how someone
So
would go down that path.
if I needed to advise myself when I was a retail agent on how to find investors or how to get into investment real estate, I would say it would be really important to educate myself as much as possible on terminology and keep a really open mind on learning about the different parts of it, the different aspects of investment real estate, because it's completely different from residential. There's a lot from traditional real estate. There's a lot that you can use from the traditional real estate world to make it easier on the investment side. But I would say learning a lot about estate sales, probate deals, because you don't see much of that in traditional real estate.
Yeah.
But the more value you can add to an investor, the easier it is. I do believe investment side is easier because there's very little emotion in it.
Yeah.
It boils down to if the numbers make sense or not, and math doesn't lie. So from that standpoint, the deals are easier, but they're also a little bit more complicated. And depending on the route, how a deal happens or where it comes from, if it's a probate deal or an estate deal, or if it's a foreclosure, usually you're dealing with bigger entities, and you need to know how to navigate that. If it's a short sale, you might get a great deal, but it depends on how you communicate with asset managers and that kind of thing. So I would say that's one thing. And the second thing I would say is networking, because you just learn more that way. I also do think that your core values matter a lot, because I see a lot of people who try to get into the investment side, and most cities, unless you're in a really massive city like New York, but I think the majority of middle-sized to semi-large and small cities are kind of like a big small town. I see a lot of people get blacklisted because they don't have the best core values, and word travels fast. So I think reputation matters. So making sure you're doing the right thing. And I just think being open to learning and being humble, I think plays a big part in it.
Yeah,
because what happens is you learn by solving problems, and every deal that you do, you get a new layer of expertise. Everyone knows how to close a deal, but the more problems you can solve, the more you have to come from a value adding standpoint. So
that's such good advice. I absolutely love that. That's not where a lot of people start. I think they start at, hey, there's some money to be made there, and if I can kind of figure out how to do that, then I can make some money on it, instead of going, hey, I want to make sure I'm aligned with somebody the way that from a value standpoint, that I should be aligned with them and they should be aligned with me. That's such fantastic advice.
I think the general life advice of loving what you do also applies here, because you could literally go crazy if you don't love what you're doing, because there are days that it's just you're going down a rabbit hole of solving problems,
Yeah.
So and then you boil down to having to manage your time and knowing which problems are worth solving and that kind of thing. So
yeah. So, and you mentioned vocabulary. That's really important, right? How quickly is an investor going to say, look, this is not who I want to deal with, if they don't know the basics of some parts of the conversation, right? If the investor says
Right.
the word mitigation and you have to ask them what mitigation is, right? It's gonna be an issue, right?
It might kill the deal.
Right?
Or,
And,
yeah,
or title, right? Different ways of
exactly.
titles, right?
Yeah. So one thing that I think of is in traditional real estate, you never hear the word syndicate to syndicate a deal, but it's common in investment real estate, or value add. You don't use that in traditional real estate. So I think the terminology is like very important.
So where can somebody go to get that terminology? Where can they go to dig into that, to figure out, is there should they go, like you mentioned networking, right? Should they go to, should they find some investor meetings and go hang out there and try to learn that? Is there books they can read? Tell me a little bit about how somebody could possibly get better at a little bit of that if they're trying to kind of level up their game and understand how to fit in a little bit better with those people.
So I believe strongly in being direct and being transparent. And a lot of people who have succeeded at what they do understand that helping people is rewarding. So if I were starting out, I would literally go ask people for help and say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I want to learn. Can you help me? Yes or no? If it's no, then I move on to other people. But a lot of people are open to helping. I get new people in the industry all the time who ask me if I can guide them through something, and I'm happy to help. And a lot of people who have a lot more experience than I do are happy to help me as well. Um, and just knowing that you can learn from everyone. This is not really new, but there's a member on my team who constantly reminds us that some of the best deals are the ones that you walk away from, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds simple, but it's like wisdom that you need to keep remembering to keep progressing. So there are a lot of people who help. There are a lot of social media investment groups where you can network with like-minded people or people who have the same interests or who are going for after the same niche. And a lot of it in this industry, definitely it rings true that your net worth is your network is your net worth.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And so you and I have talked about this several times before, and I think that this is worth bringing up for the audience, and we'll talk a little bit about this. We're going to talk about your relationship with other agents and how you can help them and be a resource for them. Okay, we'll dig into that in just a second, but we'll finish up kind of here because we want to make sure we're respectful of your time and everything. So we'll talk a little bit about how to network with current agents and everything, and then Ben can kind of summarize and wrap everything up, and then we'll figure out how people can get in contact with you if they have any questions. So you deal with a lot of agents, and you're in a pretty big company, and you have a role where you're connected with a lot of agents, either as they're coming in the office or as they're learning and they're getting their business up and running and everything. And one of the super smart things that you do from early on in our conversations is you're really connected with them, and you make sure that they understand that you're a resource if they have properties that that are unique and have and that need to sell quickly, or if they have a buyer that's looking for something very specific, right? So you kind of put yourself out there in a way that allows them to see you as a resource, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about that and why that makes a difference and how that kind of helps everybody?
Absolutely. So as mentioned, I believe strongly in networking, and I think some of the best networking that I can do is with real estate agents because they're directly dealing with buyers and sellers. So if it's regarded from a standpoint of adding value, a lot of agents who have what I tell a lot of agents is I want us to be your best cash buyer, right? Because typically they're working with a seller and they can present options to their sellers. Not just because of this, but especially with the pandemic, a lot of sellers are reluctant to sell their homes traditionally. They don't want strangers walking through their houses. They might want to close sooner. They might want to get a direct number, which is what they net, rather than having to figure out their settlement statement and their closing and title fees and things like that. And so I educate agents on how our company operates. And when they go meet with the seller, they can say, hey, we can go this route, down route A, where I list your property for X percent of dollars. And We do a week worth of showings or 2 weeks worth of showings, and we bring a buyer who's going to have a financing contingency and an inspection contingency and may come and rip apart the house and ask for money off. Or we can call this company and get a cash offer, which is going to be what you net, and they cover all your costs. And you net close to what you were going to net anyway, but you get to close sooner. And since there's no financing, you know that you have that money at a flexible closing date, and so you can move forward to looking for your next house. So that's where the value comes in with working with agents who have sellers. And then we happen to be in a market that is not very favorable to buyers, because they're usually paying in some markets anywhere from 20 to 80K over asking on a sub 500K house. And so we actually remodel and sell a lot of our homes off market to agents who bring us buyers. So if a buyer is looking for, if an agent has buyers looking in city A, there is there's a chance that we've done a fresh rehab, and they can come in and they don't have to get into multiple offers, and they don't have to pay an overinflated price, and they're not paying 50K over asking, because we're just requesting the number that makes sense for us so that we can move forward to the next project. So on both ends of the spectrum, and that's just for retail agents, right, who are working with buyers and sellers. Some agents have investors, where if we have our plate full and our construction team can't get to a few properties that we've acquired, if we have a property, for example, 123 Main Street that we need to rehab, and our crew can't get to it for another 3 weeks, maybe there's an agent with an investor buyer who can just take it from us, and they have time, they're looking for a rehab and they can get to it sooner, and that way it's an ecosystem that greatly everyone's business gets leveraged. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
those are some of the ways that we bring value, and to agents, they're creating solutions for their clients, so bringing options to the table. So it works out pretty well.
Yeah, everybody wins.
Also, not every agent does it for the money, but a lot of times in non-financed deals, people are getting paid sooner. So homeowners are netting their proceeds sooner, and agents get paid faster than if they went on the traditional market. So it's just one of the ways that our industry is evolving, and I feel like it's a good way to be adaptable. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm going to summarize here just for a little bit.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask you, Omid, how do we get in touch with you? And is there anybody that, is awesome in your life that you want to, thank for all of your success? I'm right here. Saying.
Of course, I'm thankful for you guys.
But a few of the things that I've picked up from this, and Matt, you can add, anything that you think I missed, is number one, gosh, it's so important to love what you do.
Yeah.
Right. Number two, if you want to get, involved kind of in that investor arena, it's really important to, know your core values. And also to really get to know that terminology inside the investing world, because made such a great point of, a lot of times agents just think having a real estate license is enough value to add to an investor to say, I can help you. I have a real estate license. Whereas no, you need to really hone your skills so that you can go in there and say, look, I know that there's, any agent on the table that you would want to work with, but you want to work with me because gosh, I know what this is, and I know what this, I speak the language, and I know exactly what you're looking for. I heard something, along the lines of, if you're 5'8" or shorter, probably not going to be successful in this. So that knocks me out. I don't know. I may have just put that in my own head.
That takes me out too.
So I guess that's not the case, guys. I love hearing that. But Matt, anything else that you want to add there in that summary before I kind of close this out?
Yeah, he said, go to the expert and talk to them about it. Right. Don't be afraid. And if you talk to one and they're not willing to help, man, move on to another. Right. He also talked about value add, right? Make sure that you're bringing a lot of value to the table. And then he also said that whenever he's working with other people inside of a network, it's not just fit inside the box.
Yeah.
It isn't like, hey, do you have a house? I want to buy a house. Okay, we can't work together. He said, and maybe it's this way. And if that doesn't work, then maybe we do this instead. Or maybe you've got somebody else, an investor, and we can sell them several properties or something. So it seems like the common theme here is you're always problem solving. And I know you said that a couple of times, but you're always problem solving, right? You're always trying to figure it out. So I think that if you're automatically that kind of person, then investment real estate, you might want to root around there a little bit because it might be a good fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So Omid, before I ask you, what's the best way if someone had some questions that they wanted to specifically ask you, and any information that you give me, I'm going to put in the description below, of course, just for our listeners.
Okay.
Is there
Well,
anybody that, go ahead.
I'm pretty laid back. I like being on a cell phone basis with people, so I'll give my number. If anyone wants to call or text, I'm open.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll put that in the description below, and guys, just make sure if you reach out to him or call him and text him that you're bringing that heat with good questions.
That's right.
So, Omid, before we close out, is there anybody that you would like to thank besides Matt and me?
Right. Okay. So
Well, let's get that out of the way. Thank you guys for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. It's fun.
Yeah, of course. And you and so you're pretty well connected with the people on your team and your family. We both love our kids playing soccer, right? I mean, there's always that to look forward to. He's looking forward to the World Cup that's coming up as well.
Yeah.
I mean, so all of that is just that's just stuff that I know we're both super grateful for.
All right.
That's right, guys. Well, as always, thank you, Omid, for coming on. Guys, we love doing these. We love doing these podcasts. I absolutely love and crave stealing all the little bits of information from everybody's head and then sharing them with everyone else in the world. But we always need to remember that, when it comes to Brokers Open Podcast, it's not just about open houses.
It's about open minds.
See you guys.
See you guys.